Let me back up for a second so that we see the title of the presentation. And real quick introduction. My background is primarily in institutional effectiveness assessment and accreditation. I'm relatively a newbie, just 3 years in to institutional research. So I will share with you some of the new developments that we have been working on and implementing at Centenary using AI and other tools. When I asked recently, I asked DALL-E, which probably many of you know, it's a text to image model by OpenAI, to imagine how would you render, excuse me, a concept of a thingy thing. And I said immediately at the start, I said, please don't ask me any more questions, because this is the purpose of my question. I want to see how you can handle very ambiguous, nebulous requests like that I'm not providing you with a strong prompt. And I would like to see how you can manage the output with such a poor prompt. And it did. It produced rather quickly an image. So now we know how AI imagines a thingy thing. I did ask, okay, then what, quote unquote, pretty much cognitive processes, what thinking was in place for you to be able to generate this type of image? We will not be going through this list. This is just for demonstration purposes that a lot of, and again, quote unquote, thinking has gone into generating this image. And of course, this is not even a comprehensive list. It's a very simplistic list for all of us to understand. Okay, so why are we even talking about how AI would render an image of a thingy thing? How does it apply to higher education? How does it apply specifically to institutional research? And if we take it broad, institutional effectiveness, strategic planning. Well, the faculties, cognitive faculties that we a slide ago just saw, can be translated directly into many tasks that you see here on the list that are applicable to institutional research, many of us in institutional research, institutional effectiveness, and strategic planning. Again, not going through all of them, just to make a point there. So in this presentation, we will be pretty much hopping between conceptual representations and some use cases. When it comes to use cases, we will look at here when I'm referring to conversational AI more in terms of our iterative discussions with such models as ChatGPT or Claude, but we will take it further, how we can leverage changing behaviors of AI or parameter tuning. We will look just at one parameter, as well as we'll take it to a different level, and we will take a peek into actual machine learning development. Very basic, but stepping into machine learning development models. I'm hoping that this presentation will be of relevance to, again, I consider myself a newcomer, but a newbie, but I still hope that some of the seasonal IR professionals will find value in this presentation. As far as resources, hopefully it's applicable to both high resource and low resource, but we will concentrate primarily on tools that are open source. That's why the presentation is about bootstrapping. We're a very small institution. There are 2 of us. I hear that it can be even less than 2. It can be just 1 representative of IR. So very small school, relying primarily on open source if we want to step into some exploration and innovation, or low cost. And again, whether it's very focused IR, traditional IR operations, or much broader tasks that involve institutional effectiveness and strategic planning. And before we go any further, we will not necessarily be defining AI. That's almost impossible. But we still need to create some boundaries for the purpose of this conversation. So we would still need to create some context. So when we define something, we also need to, when we define what something is, we should also set parameters what it is not. So as we use very loosely the term AI, the next slide, I would like to establish some parameters here for the purpose of this conversation. What AI is and what AI is not. Okay. For centuries, there has been a very interesting tension between lexicographers, who are researchers, who see their goal as describe how the language is used. The disconnect here is that for general population, the expectation is no, don't describe how the language is used. Tell us how to use it correctly so as an immigrant, I can succeed. So this disconnect has been very visible for quite a few centuries and has not been necessarily resolved. And what's interesting is that the same disconnect, the same incongruent attitudes are resurfacing again now between, again, using this term very loosely, AI scientists, between AI scientists and the attitude for AI by general public. We come into AI, using AI tools as a search engine. Tell me the truth. I want to find the truth about a certain phenomenon. I want to find that one correct answer, how to solve a problem. But that's not what AI, generative AI models, for example, such as ChatGPT, such as Claude, and other models, that's not how they function. They work with probabilities. There was never a promise to create that source of truth for us. Okay, so if the power of AI is not necessarily in the search engine, find the truth, find the most correct answer, if that's not the intended power, then what is? How should we leverage AI? Well, how should we leverage that probabilistic art of randomness? The very first slide that I showed you, we asked AI, please imagine what a thingy thing would look like. So one of the powers of AI, again, using AI very loosely, is to be able to imagine, which translates into some abilities that we will look at use cases for these abilities. To be able to serve as an interdisciplinary translator for problem solving, as a translator of knowledge abilities. For example, I'm not able to understand something. Please translate that knowledge for me and explain it to me in much more simple terms so that I can still engage in the conversation and begin learning. Use of metaphor, again, that's a way of translation across disciplines or levels of knowledge. And next, simulations. We'll look at that. So modeling scenarios and outcomes, which in turn translates into problem solving, but again, not finding one correct solution, but working through multiple viable potential solutions. And ultimately that can translate into innovation. So what we will look at are some use cases where AI can be leveraged in its ability to translate and in its ability to simulate. To do that, I will not be using Centenary University data, or will not be using any other university data. Pinecrest University is a simulated university, it does not exist. I asked DALL-E again to imagine that there's a Pinecrest University, so let's work with that as we simulate some of the scenarios and demonstrate some of the applications. So I did a pretty good job. Love the library here. Looks pretty realistic. So anything we will be looking at is a simulation for Pinecrest University. And here is one. There's nothing really that special about the ability to communicate institutional data. Well, it is, of course. The power here is to be able to answer users' questions about institutional data, but that's not even the point or the value here. The point here is to be able to engage users in a safe environment of asking questions at the level that you as a user is comfortable with. For example, the question that we actually see here, it's phrased very poorly. So it shows that the user, the participant in this discussion is not very well versed in the field of analytics, but this is how they are able to communicate, and we're thankful that they would like to engage with the university data. They are asking it the way that they can ask it. And the behavior that has been set for this GPT is to address the abilities, different levels of abilities of communication about data. So on the one hand, some users feel safe in the way of asking questions, not being able to ask educated questions about data, and other users can truly benefit from their levels of understanding how to communicate about data. So again, it's not as much about the easiness of drawing quickly from the institutional data and provide information. It's more of a culture shift, supporting our institutions to begin interacting with data, not feeling uncomfortable interacting with data, and also using it as a way of learning about analytics if they're willing to participate in these discussions. Okay, so that's a relatively simple example, but it has proven pretty popular with the users. Next example, let's look at a simple simulation where we can let users play. Again, we'll be using this word a lot, play. We want to create that truly data culture. Play with potential outcomes, to visualize, to assess risks, to begin moving in the decision support area. So here, for example, this simulation, Pinecrest Financial Foresight Simulator, was created with settings that are of value to Pinecrest. So it was customized. That's why such settings as tuition, enrollment count, faculty count, and so forth, pretty common choices, but of course it can be decided by the users, by the developers, what type of settings they want to establish, as well as strategic decisions. Yes, for college in this case, Pinecrest is struggling with financial challenges, is highly tuition driven. So these strategic decisions have been set, but it can be changed to and be customized to any individual institution. Most importantly, it provides financial alerts. We have set up about, I don't remember, but 6 or 7 types of financial alerts that are drawing from data. These alerts were also set up in mind for what is of value to this specific institution, to this specific type of institution. Another relatively easy one to set up, but let's say Pinecrest College is going through accreditation. And it's not even about AI writing anything to you. It's about getting AI to assess and again support you learning and understanding about the process. Standard 6 with middle states. Many of us have struggled with that standard, and it has. If we are to share with the GPT our strategic planning, our KPIs, so that it has some context and understanding about us, we can engage in some of the conversations that may do sanity check for us throughout the process. With one of the features, for example, that has been pretty popular is to simulate an interview with a visiting team through its voice capability. That creates a very realistic, very uncomfortable environment, which is the purpose actually, to create that realistic and uncomfortable sense of being able to answer questions on the go, pretty difficult questions that AI has been set up to ask. Okay, next user, please. This this challenge has been such a pain point for many institutions, including us. On the one hand, we are all set with budget planning allocation processes. Our finance department is doing great with being able to demonstrate explicit, transparent processes. Institutional effectiveness, yes. We're also collecting information, we're assessing it, we're producing a report, we're doing everything that's expected by our regional accreditor. But the question that middle states, for example, Commission on Higher Education tends to ask, how can you explicitly show data-driven processes and cover that gap or disconnect between the two that the two different departments are engaged in, but we can only tell stories about how collaboration happens, but we cannot show explicit outcomes of that connection. So we did turn to AI, but I can't really pinpoint to you. Obviously, please contact if you would like any information on this. But we have traversed different domains here. We have used different tools to be able to do the following. You're probably recognizing these inputs that would come from our unit respondents. Units have to communicate on their goals and reports on their goals and the metrics and so forth. But where a disconnect has happened is neither the finance department nor us, we have been able to produce the types of metrics that would lead to, and here we go, we have 7 types of recommendations that are calculated fields. So this process is not subjective. This process is based on both inputs that are regionally shared by our units are translated into calculated fields and in some cases feature engineering, which in turn translates into a recommendation that is not subjective but can be demonstrated how it was decision driven, because we can't present a set of formulas and calculated fields that draw from that input level into calculated fields, into engineered fields, and finally the efficiency optimization in this case as a recommendation. What we're also trying to figure out here is we have been providing data that we were all excited about being able to provide certain metrics, but that data is not really clear to our stakeholders. Understandingly so, our stakeholders want to see something more concrete and not just a set of outcomes. So here we have been able to produce that calculated final outcomes that we can share with the community, obviously do that as a dashboard where, again, we can demonstrate very clearly now institutionally, institution-wide level, that our accreditors are asking for. The process becomes much more transparent than it was before. And not just we were not transparent before, we were not able to clearly articulate how these connections happen and how the process is truly based on data-driven approaches. Now, each step of the way can be traced to calculated fields and back all the way to input field. So we're beginning to implement that now. And again, please reach out if you would like to ask any questions about that. So remember there was a slide about, at least a mention about randomness, about controlled randomness that AI is very good at. One of there are billions of parameters, which I can't comprehend that concept, but that AI is based on. But one of the parameters, maybe you're familiar, is called the temperature parameter. So by changing temperature, that from 0 to 1, but we can push it and change it to high levels. By changing temperature, we can change the output. So if we want our output, for example, we are playing with code, and I will show you an example, or we are brainstorming, we're trying to solve problems, or even if we're working with text. If we want to stay on the safer side, we can openly tell AI which temperature we want to be used. So if we want to stay on the safer side, we will use lower temperatures. If we want to take risks, so I'm going to jump all the way to what you see here is the innovation zone. We can turn the temperature up. We just need to be careful about that edge of chaos where the output will not be useful because it will be too random for us to be able to manage it and produce the outcomes. So this is just an example to demonstrate the differences as we're working the first case with text. And then we will look at brainstorming, idea generation, and then code generation. So you see the difference. Here we're looking at very low temperature versus very high temperature. Just to make a point how, depending on our needs, we can control temperature output. And we have used that a little bit with code, and we have been using with problem solving, and again, brainstorming ideas, depending on the tasks that we have, whether we need a more traditional approach or if we can actually venture into something much less conventional. Okay, so machine learning. We have been using KNIME, as you can see here, K-N-I-M-E, open source, used in a local machine. We have played with KNIME for both supervised learning and unsupervised learning models, or algorithms. For example, in KNIME, we have used decision tree for predicting student dropout, logistic regression for predicting student enrollment, neural networks for predicting financial sustainability, and again, for unsupervised learning, K-means clustering, just starting to look into this, optimizing financial aid packages. So we have been turning to KNIME more and more. It is user-friendly, but it is such a vast and powerful tool that we are not claiming to be able to truly know how to operate it to the full effect. So we have been using, be it AI-assisted environment in KNIME itself, but be it ChatGPT, the stronger models 4.0 for Omni, or Claude 3.5, they have assisted us as well in learning which, let me show you if you're not familiar with KNIME, which nodes. So for example, Excel reader is a node, number to string is a node. Model tuning in the beginning was not a part of the process. It was used later for model tuning. So we created this process flow for now, basic machine learning for decision tree learner to be able to begin stepping into the machine learning environment, and have been good experience. Please reach out if there's anything that we can support you with open source. Okay, problem solver. Of course, there's no such thing as we have a question, especially if it's a complex question, which a lot of times in higher education or other industries, very few questions are simple question. It's a complex organizational question with multiple stakeholders, multiple needs for multiple stakeholders. A lot of times these needs do not necessarily align. So I cannot show you the entire process. It's an iterative process. There's no push of a button response. With this slide, I'm just showing you some of the information that we have asked this GPT to rely on as it is taking the user through that iterative process of decision making to be able to arrive at some of the potential solutions. But what I want to show you in the next two slides, so here is an example of a complex. We could either take it as far as calling it, quote unquote, that's an actual term, wicked problem, where each problem consists of multiple problems, they counteract, and you need to figure out the relationships among those problems. So here's an example of a problem. And let's say we mapped out to show our stakeholders the contradictions across the stakeholder needs. So it's impossible to 100% satisfy each stakeholder because there are inherent contradictions, as well as there are some relationships that could actually support the overall process. So when we communicate with the board of trustees or with cabinet, and we are tasked with, if not coming up with solutions, but at least coming up with suggestions how to approach this solution. This simulation is intended to show the stakeholders that, let's say we put all of the factors to 100. You see how the colors change for our stakeholders. The colors indicates level of satisfaction. Or if we clicked on students so that we can see what is required for student satisfaction. As long as we click on the node students, the factors have moved, as well as colors or satisfaction for other stakeholders have also changed. So we have to be realistic here, because in one of the scenarios, it changed to operational cost being a 0, which is impossible. We have to move that toggle, or class size, and so forth. So here, we haven't yet tested it with our stakeholders, because this is more of a proof of concept. We, again, this is not our data yet. But we want to be able, as we come across complex questions, and we discuss that with stakeholders, demonstrate the complexity of trade-offs that is inherent in this problem before we set next directions for how we can approach resolving, which will still not result in 100% satisfaction for each stakeholder and 100%, whichever direction is considered to be positive, whether it's whether it's 100% or 0. So we are hoping to be able to use that again to continue conversations with our community, where we can be transparent about data. This specific environment was not a simple solution, of course, because we had to do some feature engineering, identify formulas to be able to create quantitative relationships that would be somewhat realistic. In this case, to a simulated college, but in our case, it would be to our university. So again, all of these examples are not necessarily our interaction with AI is not necessarily based only on how do we ensure that our operations of such a small team are efficient, effective. Of course, we would love to. and we are working on that. But what we are even more excited about is how we can contribute to decreasing fears about assessment, to introducing concept of a play, of being able to touch data, like kids, to be able to touch data and engage with data at different levels versus us, IR office, being just one way of communication and not being able to always to demonstrate either full transparency or to demonstrate again, to decrease fears that some of our members traditionally, historically, may have acquired about assessment, about data, about understanding data, but most importantly, how to become agents of data. So here we are. Do you have any questions?
Victoria, this was great. There are a couple questions in the chat. I don't know if you can see them or need us to read them out to you, but we'll start.
If you could read them, that would be wonderful. If I need to turn to any slides, back to any slides.
Sure. So the first one is from James, and it says, is the AI host inside your institution's firewall? How do you protect your data via privacy and security?
Well, that's a great question. That's why for now, all of the AI musings we are doing with simulations until we can show proof of concept, and then to engage our IT office and other relevant stakeholders to ensure that even though a lot of the data that we're working with is on the local machine, but we of course want to involve our IT to ensure that we're not crossing any into a territory where we could create or endanger the university with data, of course.
Fantastic.
So for now, it's on the NIME again. It's on the local machine, so we are using that protection for now. And like I said, proof of concept. Or if we are sharing any data, then it's based more on public data. For example, most of the data for the data for the fact book and data dictionary is based on public data in iPads, and not any proprietary information.
Excellent.
But yes, this is something that we are dreamers here, but at the end of the day, of course, we have to think of how we can tame our dreams a little bit to ensure that we don't misuse AI for its purposes.
Nothing wrong with dreaming. You mentioned NIME, and that's kind of related to the next question. Kind of a couple of points. Do you have to download NIME to use it? Is there an option like ChatGPT? And then also, can you provide the link just to ensure that folks are going to the right place?
Yes, you download NIME, and then you work with your files on your machine with that. I'm not sure what the question was about ChatGPT in reference to NIME. There is AI in NIME, but like I mentioned, and maybe that's why you're asking, some questions have been easier for us to actually engage ChatGPT or Claude 3.5, which I'm personally very impressed with, to be able to help us with, especially in the beginning, identifying, hey, we want to work on such and such project. Which nodes do you suggest that we consider using? Or when we're working within a specific, in which sequence? Very important. Within each node, as we're setting up parameters, also we may be asking some questions, and it has been very helpful. So there was a third, the link. Is there any way, please, you could email me? I don't know if I'll be able to provide the link on the go right now. I will be happy to share the link or answer any questions about NIME.
Manara, does that satisfy you? Do you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, I will email her for sure. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all that's in the chat, but we do have a little bit of time. So if any folks just want to kind of raise their hand or chime in with questions.
Ryan put the link to NIME in the chat, Minar.
Oh, sweet.
Okay. Thank you.
You. It's a pretty straightforward download, but there is a learning curve. Again, a couple of years ago, learning NIME, I did not find easy. Now I feel like we have a tutor to help us learn to navigate NIME and to do some sanity checks on our applications.
Do you have a tutor within your university, or do you have one? Because I see like there is a lot of option to tutorial for the Q9 online.
I mean, NIME tutorials are very helpful, of course, but when we have a targeted question as we're working in NIME, then using AI within I or using ChatGPT or Claude with a specific question for what node to choose or what parameters to say, I have found that helpful because it's a much more targeted conversation about a specific question that you have. But of course, there are plenty of videos and they are very good.
Great.
And NIME is very versatile. It's not, yes, you can play with machine learning or try to step into the realm of machine learning in NIME, but there are, be it process flow, be it prepping data, be it analytics. I yet have not found an application that we were not able to turn to NIME for to be able to
Excellent.
use that in that environment.
We have another question. I think that, so it's along the lines of, you've done all this work in terms of these simulations and things. So how is the proof of concept going? When do you feel like you're on target to go live soon, or what's the kind of reaction on your campus?
Proof of concept has become much easier now, because before, when we were trying to draw a chart or explain what we would like to do, we were not able to generate a simulated output. And now, instead of trying to convince stakeholders why something would be useful, we can show them, this is what you will see, this is what you will get. Tell us if this is exactly what you want. For example, some of the recommendations to certain simulations that we looked at, they actually said, no, this will not be very helpful to us. Can you, instead of this recommendation, for example, for finance office, this recommendation is not helpful. Please reconsider. We ask them, what is it that you would like? We go back and work with our formulas to make changes. So the process has become much more engaging, both for us, for our office, as well as other stakeholders, because we can now pretty much touch our ideas versus shelf a lot of ideas, not being able to express the value or go back to tuning our idea to the level of acceptance by the stakeholders. So yes, there are a couple of them that are now being tuned, but the excitement for us is that yes, it's going forward. We don't mind tuning. We want tuning. We actually, for our finance office, we were not even sure what would work well for them. I have absolutely no background in that area, so it's very difficult for me to make predictions what would be of value to them, but we still wanted to show them something. So once we did, they understood where we're going with that, and then they came in with their knowledge, with their expectations, with their expertise, telling us what changes we need to make so that this tool is of value to them, versus our flawed understanding of the processes of the finance office.
If you had a guess, do you have one that you think is going to go live first with your data?
The one with connecting institutional effectiveness with financial planning, because that one, if others are more for purposes of, I don't like using the word innovation, it's just so overused, but let's use the word innovation. But that one, creating a connection between institutional planning and budget planning and reporting, that one is required by the middle states. So we are working on it now and hoping by September
Oh,
will be.
exciting. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? We've got some chat going on back and forth, and you're getting lots of kudos.
Good, thank you.
No other questions? Okay. It looks like our next session then will start at 3:30, so folks have somebody's taking the time to download 9, so excellent. This will give folks a little chance to maybe catch up on their email and whatnot, but we will be back at 3:30 for the Year of the Dog if you're staying on in this track. So we hope to see you in a little bit.